Welcome to Business Innovators Radio, featuring industry influencers and trendsetters sharing proven strategies to help you build a better life right now.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Business Innovators Radio. Again, here your host, Matthew Loughran, Principal Consultant with Midtown West Media. Today, we have a very special guest, Mr. John Marshall. John created the company Innovation Frameworks in 2003. Prior to this, John was a principal consultant with Instantiations, an object technology training company, for 7 years. He was director of the Innovation and Productivity Center at Northwest Food Processors Association from 2010 to 2014, teaching innovation to companies in Oregon, Washington, and Idaho. He returned to lead Innovation Frameworks full-time in 2014. Along with this company, in 2016, John also founded Oregon Innovation Alliance, a benefit company supporting Oregon's innovation culture. And John started his innovation work with Tektronix for 17 years prior to founding Innovation Frameworks. John, welcome to the show. How are you doing?
Good. How are you?
Good, doing great. Sounds like you have quite the innovation history. So great to have you here on Innovators Radio, of course.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Great.
Always love to talk about innovation to anybody.
No, absolutely. So starting with innovation, can you really kind of tell me about the types of companies that Innovation Frameworks helps out?
Sure. We have, of course, a kind of a Gaussian curve of different types, ranging from small startups, entrepreneurial types, all the way to big companies. But the kind of the core central group of people that we tend to service most are small to medium-sized companies from maybe 5 to 30 or 40 people. And there's a number of reasons for that, but mostly they're accessible. They don't have big innovation departments themselves. They're more amenable to change. And also they're kind of the future.
Now, obviously, innovation can be a very broad scope. Within this sector of organizations that you're helping, have you noticed any type of overlapping types of programs that you're doing on the innovation standpoint? I mean, is it product? Is it process or anything like that? Can you elaborate, please?
Yeah, actually, I could explain our model and our philosophy. We believe that innovation, as Thomas Edison so beautifully put it, there's a better way, find it. It's a really simple definition of innovation from probably the greatest innovator of all times. But we view innovation as everything from small incremental changes in a manufacturing line that somebody makes up, all the way to a major business model change, or even a cluster of businesses working together as say a trade association or some kind of entity for the good of the community. So all those levels are valid: product innovation, process innovation, marketing innovation, financial innovation. Anything can be innovated. So really, we part of our issue and our challenge at the beginning is to define with our target companies, our client companies, what is appropriate for them.
Okay, so it sounds like, again, innovation can be a very broad scope when you're coming into an organization. And I think I'm going to get back into this in a second. But can you maybe give me an idea of how did you even get started in innovation? Because as such a broad scope of a topic, how does one get into the innovation business, John?
When I was 6 years old, my dad gave me some books that the Navy published to people going into the Navy to learn about electronics, and I fell in love with this stuff. And my grandfather gave me a book on how to repair a farm building, which included steam pipes and electrical systems and on, and I just immersed in that. By the time I was 12 years old, I had my ham radio license, and I was the kid on the corner with the oscilloscope. Wanted to work at Tektronix, which I did, and I've just been an innovation guy. I love to invent stuff and build stuff. But later in my career, I also learned how much I love to teach and to consult and to help other people at the same time. So it was very natural for me to become an innovation consultant at that particular point in my career.
Wow. Okay, that's quite the interesting. So I can picture you, you know, fooling around with their old radio set, making them work. I'm assuming you had a little inventors or innovation garage, if you will. I assume when you were younger.
It was actually my bedroom. My dad got me a big 8-foot bench, and I had my oscilloscope and all my tools, and I'd go down to the radio repair shops and ask them for. I discovered that a lot of people would take their radios and phonographs to be repaired and didn't have enough money to pick them up or just forgot them, and I'd ask for those. And so over time, I collected a huge parts list, parts inventory, and I just built stuff constantly.
Oh wow, that's so interesting. I feel like it's almost something right out of a movie you'd see. Love it. So kind of circling back from your grassroots, right? Being an inventor and innovator and working with a major technology company with innovation, and then now on the education standpoint, where you're teaching companies or you're consulting with organizations about innovation, and we know it's such a broad field. What are maybe some of the most common problems that organizations have, or why would innovation frameworks come in and help them out? Maybe you can elaborate on that for me.
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, the most general statement I can make is that all businesses need to do 4 things. They need to survive, they need to grow, they need to prosper, and they need to adapt to changing times. This is true whether you're a bank or a high-tech company or a nonprofit. Everybody needs to do those things. The nature of life is that people tend to get immersed in their operational aspects and in problem solving and devote more and more attention to that and feel responsible doing so. But what's happening is that one day they wake up and discover we haven't been innovating our own future. And so we tend to come into companies that realize or can be made to realize that they're really not planning for 2, 3, 4 years out and not devoting the time. So that's kind of our ideal client, is someone who realizes that and needs to take steps to convert their company from being a totally operational entity to also having a portion of their efforts and their thought processes and their culture thinking about how to do things better in really all different ways in the company.
So it sounds like that can, again, overlap into several different departments inside of an organization. It sounds like what you're describing is pieces of organizational excellence in regards for process-driven organizations or manufacturing, organizations. But then you said you're also working with, some companies that might be, smaller tech companies and so forth. Do you find yourself working with certain types of leaders in those organizations? Are those HR leaders? Are those, owner operators based on the size of the organization? Who are the types of people that you're engaging with inside these companies?
This is a very good question, very relevant. When I founded Innovation Frameworks, personally, I was very interested in project and program management. I was president of the Program Management Forum in Oregon for 3 years, and really immersed in project and program management. What we found, however, is that those were the wrong guys to come into a company, at that level. We really discovered that, and especially when we worked with a food process organization, that you really need to come in at the president and owner level and then work down to senior staff. Because innovation is one of those things that is, it's as much a leadership and a cultural change challenge as it is a technical challenge. And if it isn't supported and driven from the top and understood from the top, it'll never fly. So we purposely morphed and changed our approach to come in at that level and really select the people. We have to select our clients as much as they select us for success. And so that we come in at the executive staff level whenever we possibly can, and then we work down to the levels that we need to.
Yes, what I'm hearing from you as well, it's a very common trend. With you're doing change management, if you're changing processes, you're looking forward thinking strategically as well as visionary. Is you really need that executive sponsor within that organization to then help drive that initiative. Again, this is seen in Fortune 500 companies down to small organizations as well. But I guess without that executive buy-in to push and drive the change, you're really not gonna hit the mark. Is what I'm getting from you as well. Is that correct?
absolutely correct. And furthermore, I would add that it's not just sponsorship. Sponsorship is sort of almost like a passive thing. An executive can delegate to this. They really need to themselves be personally vested and invested, and also have the mindset of innovation. They need to deeply understand how important it is to plan for growth as well as plan for operational excellence.
So, John, transitioning a little bit, I know Oregon itself has, quite a bit of green initiatives. Have you seen on the innovation standfront any, companies kind of trying to move towards that triple bottom line approach at all?
Yeah, there's a lot of companies that are starting to do that, and Oregon is one of the, I don't know how many states, but it was 17 a couple of years ago, who basically approved this new form of business called a benefit company, which is a for-profit or neutral profit, either LLC or corporation, but is responsible for the triple bottom line, not just the profitability. And so there are many of these benefit corporations, benefit LLCs being developed today because people have that sense of responsibility to be innovative and simply to do the right thing, to care about social benefits and care about our environment, not just our environment, but the natural world in general. So the answer is yes. I think and Oregon is one of the great places in the United States, that really cares about this topic.
And just so I can clarify for our listeners, again, the triple bottom line, what that really means is an organization isn't only, looking at just the economic piece of their business. They're also looking at the social aspect of their business as well as the environmental. Again, there's typically driven through corporate social responsibility initiatives and so forth. But I know Oregon is a leader in the U.S. In this program. And then I know you said you have worked with some benefit companies, or even in your introduction, I know you have a benefit company. So I kind of really wanted to get your take on inside of Oregon, maybe some of the companies that you might be helping out in regards for working with them. Is that like an innovation from a company standpoint? Has there been an increase in kind of looking to innovate towards becoming more socially conscious or environmentally conscious in the state of Oregon?
Yeah, most definitely. And Oregon is really a kind of a hotbed of this kind of social consciousness and environmental consciousness. And one of the things that I really love about the intersection of innovation with this is that innovation, to me, is a primary solution to the very difficult problems of integrating these three viewpoints. They tend to be competing with each other. Certainly, natural resources, when you go after natural resources, you're going to damage nature. And so coming up with solutions that are win-win instead of win-lose are, to me, innovation problems. To me, an innovation problem is a problem that's not obvious to solve. The solution is not easy. It requires not only processes, but cleverness and resource and a lot of different viewpoints and some luck. So what we try to do is provide companies with that knowledge that it's a more complex problem than just an engineering problem in general, and B, the actual resources by which you can solve those problems. I hope I've answered the question.
Absolutely.
Talking about, and we have a huge interest in this because we really, ourselves, we very much care about our environment. We very much care about social issues, and we want to solve them. And I believe that engineers can do almost anything if their target is to do these challenging things. I mean, just look at that, the SpaceX, watching that rocket land back on the ship. This was right from Dick Tracy, and here it was. They were doing it. This is the most incredible demonstration that we can do almost anything if we really try. And innovation is the core of it. So I see, at least our part of it is to help people see innovation as a solution set that can be applied to these difficult problems of creating social justice, involving everybody socially and helping our environment and the natural world as well as the economic.
Now, you bring up a good point there as well. And you said seeing the solution. Now, Is it? I guess if I'm a small, medium-sized business owner, I have 30 employees. I have a million things going on in my day, right? I have one precious commodity, which is called time. I can't create any more of it, so I need to really allocate how I spend that time for maximum, capacity as well as productivity. I know you mentioned something earlier as well, where a lot of businesses all of a sudden they find themselves 2 years, 3 years down the line, and then they realize they haven't innovated. So it sounds like that can be quite the obstacle for small businesses.
I would say that is probably the number one obstacle that we encounter as innovation consultants. It would be nice to do this, but frankly, we're going to have to put it off a couple of weeks because we've got this emergency. But what's funny is the consultant, you go in and people say, our problems are unique, but you discover that they're pretty much exactly the same as everybody else's problems. And one of those things is simply not having enough time because of all the operational emergencies that constantly happen. But we have developed, because of that, in response to that, we've had to develop ways to solve that, get around it. And what we've discovered is that we can ask people a very simple question, which is, are you doing the? And now, keep in mind, we're dealing with senior staff and presidents and owners. We have a concept called doing the top half of your job versus the bottom half of your job. Especially people who are entrepreneurs and have grown their business from the roots up, tend to do everything themselves. It's like that's what you do when you're doing a startup. But as you become more and more of a mover and shaker in your company and a leader and someone that needs to direct large things, large motions, large things, you can't go in and do and solve everything. And so we call doing the top half of the job the part that's most leverage, and going down and doing the thing that you're comfortable with is really not high leverage, the bottom half. So we purposely go in early on and say, look, we want you to spend the next week figuring out what you might have as the bottom half of your job that you can delegate and grow other people doing that, and see if you can free up 2 hours a week. Free up just 2 hours a week by doing that. And in every case, they can easily do it. And then we say, okay, now you have 2 hours a week, Friday afternoon from 2 to 4 o'clock, say, to think about your future. And that way we proactively free up time for them, in a very, not a strategic way, but a very practical way. And that seems to be an amazingly successful approach.
Yeah, it sounds like, if I can equate that almost in like a business level strategy, you're basically coming in and having a company, or in this case, a senior executive, almost unbundle, right? If a corporation is going to unbundle their services, right, and kind of focus on their core competencies, you're doing a similar approach, but at the level of that senior executive inside their organization, focusing in on their core competencies, right? Maybe delegating that bottom half of their job, or those bottom half pieces, so they can, again, focus on alignment of the overall organization. I guess that's really the difference between, working on your company or in your company as well, as I've kind of heard that before. So that's quite the interesting process that you've gone through there as well. Now, you said you did say you've heard common problems, and this is kind of one of them. And then you also mentioned a word earlier in the interview. I want to bring back. So I think this might fit in. Is you mentioned the word cluster, where you see a cluster of businesses, or a cluster within an organ, in industry, et cetera. Can you kind of explain how clusters and innovation kind of go hand in hand? Because I know it's a pretty sizable topic.
Yes. We in we had the recession in 2008, 2009, but we went ahead and had a booth set up at Innovate in Portland, and just by pure luck, we ran across some guys from the Northwest Food Processors Association. They'd just gotten about a $3.5 million grant from the state of Oregon to put together an innovation productivity center. And they had hired a lot of productivity people, lean and all that, but they hadn't really developed their innovation center. And they were halfway through the grant, and frankly, they were worried because they just didn't have the innovation part built up. And they said, "Can you help us?" And we said, "Gee, let me think about that for a nanosecond." Yes. So we went in and we helped them as consultants for a year, and then the president of that organization asked me to actually take over the program. So in the process, we got to know the president, and he was a real advocate of clusters. Of course, being in a trade association, you're going to be thinking industry and thinking of all the pieces that contribute to an industry. His name's Dave Zapponi, and he was president at the time, and his push and vision, and several people with him, were that let's build up the whole cluster around the industry, because it's not just the individual companies themselves, but the together, working together as a group, and not violating any antitrust rules or anything like that, but basically working together to improve the industry was important. We came in and said, with Dave, that it's okay, if you're going to talk about fundamental improvements, you're talking about innovation. So let's talk about the concept of innovating a cluster, which means figuring out ways to do clusters in new and better ways. And so our challenge we ended up having a 5-year stint with them, and 5 grants we processed. One of the major things was challenges for us was to figure out how to do cluster level innovation, what it would mean, what it would roll out as, and we did do that.
So that's quite interesting. So what you're saying as well is, again, as an individual business owner, you're always focused on your business, right? Obviously, you want to make sure the industry is going to do well, but you're always looking at competitive analysis and competitors in the industry. But what you've just described, though, is taking a step back and looking at the industry section. So if we build up the whole industry, I assume rising tides raise all ships at that point. So what I'm really kind of curious is, what did you find that helped innovate at the industry level? Or maybe some of the findings you came out of that grant to help the entire industry build out, which obviously would then trickle down, right, into those individual companies that were maybe part of that trade association, a part of that program that you were working with.
We did a large number of things to help, but one of the ones that we're really proud of, I need to introduce my wife, Rosie Marshall, who's here, my wife and business partner, and she was 50% of this program. She took that challenge and put together a thing called executive forums, and she had a set of basically 3 different cohorts of about 15 executives each. They would meet on a monthly basis at one of the sites. Every month we would trade off and go to a different site. They would do a plant tour. They would talk about their things that they were proud of, and they would get a little 15 to half an hour teaser lecture from me on innovation, and then just a general discussion. Rosie arranged it so that everybody who was a member of each cohort was in non-competing companies. So, they might put a bread company with a soup company or something like that. She didn't put 2 ice cream manufacturers together in the same.
Gotcha.
That way they could talk freely, and they did. After about the 3rd session, people gained a lot of confidence with each other and trust. And in fact, one of the measures of success was that these were supposed to be 7:30 to 9:30, and nobody ever left at 9:30. They kept, and these are executives, with busy jobs. They tend to hang around till 10 or 10:30 talking to other people because they get all excited. This was very, very successful. We had to do very little work ourselves, other than just get everybody together who were a good good chemistry between them and a trusting group, and let them have at it. And so this was one of the things that led to innovations in cluster work, which is basically figuring out ways that they could work together.
Yeah, I wouldn't downplay that as not doing much. It's quite the feat to first, I think, select executives and then actually have them show up. So I wouldn't downplay that in any way whatsoever. So great work on that.
There's a few funny stories about that, because for example, Bob of Bob's Red Mill, who's famous in Portland, of course, he finally joined us kicking and screaming. And after 2 sessions, he looked at Rosie and says, "What am I doing not coming to these things? This is a and he coined the term fellowship of peers, and absolutely fabulous. So he became a total convert. And another president of a company pulled me aside and he says, when you're at the top of the company and you're the owner too, it's very lonely. You don't have anybody who's a peer that you can talk to. This provides this fellowship of peers that I can talk to and exchange. And, as a president, you have to present sort of an image to everybody, and you're the big cheese, and, you're infallible. But it's nice to have a group of people that you can just talk comfortably with who have similar issues, even though they're in different, product areas.
Yeah, and you brought up a really good point there as well. Being an executive or an owner, sometimes you don't want to maybe ask your staff for advice on vision and so forth. So you do need the kind of that peer group. But being an educator, and if I'm speaking to our listeners right now that are those medium and small business owners, right? They might be feeling the same constraint. So if you were, sitting down and having an initial consult with one of my listeners, I'm really kind of curious, what would be maybe the first thing you would suggest that they would do, in an instance like this? If they're feeling that constraint, or that they heard, oh man, I need to innovate, I need to set aside my time. Like, what would be the first thing that you can maybe give them a quick fix, if you will, over the radio show? That would be great.
Absolutely. The old saying that innovation is thinking out of the box, I know it's corny and overused and everything, but actually it's really a quite excellent description of innovation. If you think of the box as being a set of parameters and constraints that you think you're constrained by, and it is other people call it the echo chamber, it's very difficult to even know the box you're in. My wife has a saying, a fish is the last one to know he's in water. And so, the fish really needs a bird to fly over and say, hey, do you realize that you're underwater? And so I would say one of the most important things is to get an outside view. In other words, get somebody who's outside the box and who also is a professional and knows how to do that and how to say it, how to work it. So, of course, that leads right naturally to what might be construed as a self-serving comment, but employing, this is what consultants do. Consultants are outside the box, but they're very familiar with the field. And all of their clients are other innovation-seeking people. And so hiring, or at least having some conversations with somebody who's has expertise in innovation and has a consultant kind of a training background, is a very good thing to do. It gives you a perspective. I mean, you've got a toothache, you go to a dentist. You don't try to repair it yourself. Getting that kind of professional help that can give you a perspective from outside of your own box is important.
Now, again, what you just said there sounds great in regards for, as a business owner, right? Time constraints. As I love that phrase you just said. As a fish is the last one to know that they're underwater until the bird flies over, right? I think that's a great imagery to kind of to get this point across. Definitely. Now, one thing I was going to say was the depth and breadth of a consultant coming in, and with that outside view. As a business owner, would you want to see like a consultant that's worked with other types of your business, or does it really matter, or is it just innovation specific? I would love your take on that. So say I'm a manufacturing owner, right? Maybe I produce, we'll say food products, for example. Right. There's a lot of, I can look at innovating anything from the products I put in my food itself, to the process, to the way we're disposing of waste for triple bottom line. I mean, there's a lot of different things that can go into innovation, the thought of innovation. So if I'm looking out to the consulting world, would I be looking for someone who's a food consultant or an innovation? Because I mean, it gets pretty broad, right? So is there anything that you might be able to offer to our listeners to help them narrow that search down a little bit?
Yes, absolutely, and I totally get that question. Years ago, I was intrigued by a discovery that in the artificial intelligence field, the specific one dealing with expert systems, that what they did was they paired a content expert with a process expert. And this was a real breakthrough for me in my thinking about how to do innovation consulting. Innovation itself, to me, in one sense, is very, very simple. It's simply combining two completely different fields together to produce an emergent result. And you can carry this to the people. I think it's less important that you have a consultant who is, if you're in the steel business, that you have a steel business consultant. You've got plenty of expertise already in your company in that area. What you need is somebody who's an innovation expert to couple with your content expert. And in fact, one of the best, most innovative companies in the world, which is General Foods, has formalized this to a process they call their I squads or innovation squads. And these were groups of people who were innovation experts that would partner with specific product groups long enough to, as a team, develop a new product. The process experts would teach the content experts how to think innovatively, how to do the processes, how to develop their capabilities, how to have the mindset, the leadership, the project management, all that kind of stuff. And the content experts would teach people about the food products. And it was that interchange between the two. I think it's a danger to hire too many people, if you're trying to break out, that are like you. And that's you were asking earlier today about fundamental flaws. We tend to hire people like us, but in the innovation world, we should hire people who have some differences that we have, and that's where the real fruitfulness comes out, is having those differences.
So it really sounds like, to make sure you're hiring for outside of your own box, from what I'm getting from that as well.
I have to qualify that, because if you go too far out of your box, then you just get chaos. You get people who don't understand each other. So it is an art. In fact, a few years ago for Cutter Magazine, I wrote an article called "Innovation is an Art," and here's why. Because personally, I love art, and I personally think that art is actually senior to science, not junior to science. And it bothers me when people say in books, we're changing innovation from an art to a science. To me, it's the other way around. Science discovers the principles of nature and the natural world and chemistry and physics and all that. Art is to be able to take those scientific principles and those skills and do something creative and new and utilize them. So it's, in that sense, it's senior. There is an art to doing these things, like an art to having a collaborative team. Too much doesn't work, too little doesn't work. In other words, if you're too much alike, you're not going to come up with anything new and creative. If you're too different, you're just going to disagree about everything or just not understand each other. So there's an art to having it just right. And that's yet another reason for having a consultant company help you, because they've been through it so many times. They can tell when, this is a good match, but this isn't.
Absolutely. And just to kind of wrap everything up here for you, John, as well. So the art of our listeners getting a hold of you. So if they're finding compressed problems in their organization, right, they may have their time frames. They don't have enough time to think about innovation, right? They need somebody maybe to come in and show them their top half and bottom half of their job. Or they might look at someone that wants to talk with them about triple bottom line innovation. What would be the best way for our listeners to actually reach out and connect with you?
Well, it's very, very easy. Our name of our company is Innovation Frameworks, and hence our domain name is innovationframeworks.com. And so get on the site. There's a place you can sign up and say what you want to do, and we'll get an email exchange going. There's also a phone number. Give me a call on that number, and we'll set up an hour meeting, no charge for the first meeting, and we'll sit and talk and see if there's a connection, if there's anything we can do for your listener, and if there's resonance basically happening there. We do have a very specific process that we use, which begins with quite a thorough situation analysis, but we do have a light version of that situation analysis and discover where are they currently, what they should be doing, how they might strategize and plan that approach, and then doing it. So our first cycle through that is basically free. We spend one or a couple of hours with people running through a light version of that process. Really no charge. We learn from the process as well. And if there's something there then we go forward with some kind of a relationship.
Wow, that sounds like a whole lot of value that Innovation Frameworks is providing to organizations up front as well. John, I'd really like to thank you for your time today. It's been a pleasure speaking with you. It's been a pleasure learning about your organization, and obviously a great fit here at Business Innovators Radio, talking with Innovation Frameworks. And I just want to say thank you very much. And I know our listeners will get a lot of value out of this conversation today.
Well, thank you very much for having me on your show, and hope to talk with you more.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks for listening to Business Innovators Radio. To hear all episodes featuring leading industry influencers and trendsetters, visit us online at businessinnovatorsradio.com today.